So like I said, I'm Audrey, and today I will be presenting my paper titled Thematic Content Analysis of the Cybersecurity Skills Demand in South Africa. So just before we jump straight into all of the details surrounding the thematic content analysis, I always feel like it's best to just give a brief background of exactly the field of study, so to say. So over the last few years, the number of leak records have been increasing progressively year on year. So it's getting to a point where every year the amount of leak records are just getting more and more, which is obviously a big concern. So from 2020 until 2021, there's been an increase in the average cost of what a security or a data breach has been costing people or companies. So this might not seem like much, 10% doesn't seem like a lot, but it's the largest increase in the last 7 years. So I think that's something that you need to take into consideration if you're looking at the larger whole. So they consider the naivety of employees to be one of the main concerns in terms of the vulnerabilities. So obviously, the employees working in companies are one of the largest concerns when you're looking at breaches. So they also say that the human error is the main cause of 95% of cyber attacks. So I think those last 2 points tie in together very nicely to give you an idea of just how big an effect the human has on the overall cyber attack and the spectrum of cybersecurity as a whole. So what does this mean for South Africa? So South Africa at the moment is actually third most, or the third highest in the world in terms of cybercrime victims. So I think that's quite a big stat. And we're losing about 2.2 billion rand a year due to cyber attacks. So in a country that's already struggling economically, something like that has a massive impact. So something that has been mentioned in one of the previous papers or presentations is the cybersecurity skills gap, or the cybersecurity skills demand. So it's something that's been growing every year as well. It's getting worse and worse, and it's a global issue that we all are dealing with. So you can see on this, the slide, there are some statistics relating to it. Some global studies. There were 2 studies, or 3 studies, one in 2017, another in 2020, which is a follow-up to the one in 2017, and then in 2019, a study by HAISA. So just based on those stats, I think it's clear to see that is a large issue in terms of the global skills demand for cybersecurity. So once again, how does that skills demand relate to South Africa? So Mr. Barry Kemp, which is the head of managed IT at Fox, which is a telecommunications company in South Africa, states that South African companies are extremely vulnerable when it comes to IT security, especially because IT security is a field with the fewest skilled personnel. It is no surprise that South Africa is the third most vulnerable to cyber attacks. Okay, so obviously South Africa is struggling with it just as much as the rest of the world, and we need to take a stance and do something about this. So what is the purpose of my research? So I think the purpose of my research is pretty simple. It's to better understand the cybersecurity skills demand in South Africa. So this was done using the following process. So essentially, from the 1st of October 2020 until the 31st of January 2021, data was collected, and this data is in the form of job postings. These job postings were collected on LinkedIn, and there were a total of 280 job postings collected during that 4-month time span. So these job postings were then conducted or used in a thematic content analysis using the software Atlas TI to analyze all of this. So this thematic content analysis then showed us some knowledge, skills, and abilities for certain job roles. So I've been talking about the thematic content analysis. So we used a specific approach, a 3-phase approach. It's been divided, each phase was divided into different steps that you can use within Atlas TI to analyze your data set, so to say. So the first phase is pre-analysis, second phase material exploration, third phase interpretation, and then each of these steps, which we will cover in a bit more detail in the following slides. So the first phase, which is on screen now, is essentially the very first point is very simple. It's like creating a new Word document. You create a new project within Atlas TI. You then start adding the documents to it. So in this case, we had 4 Word documents for each month containing the job postings for the week. So each week there was a document, and we were adding those documents to the Atlas TI program. So these documents then had to be grouped, and we grouped them based on the months that they were collected in. So as you can see to the side, we've got an example here. So in January, next to January, there is the number 4. So that January is the code, is the document group. Then week 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the big number to the side is just the number of quotations within that specific week, which I will cover exactly what a quotation is just a little bit later on. So then the next step is to start writing memos, and basically just these memos can contain things like your overall project aim, your research questions, that sort of thing, to kind of just keep you guided in the right direction in terms of what you want to achieve with your research. So then the second phase, material exploration. So this is where you actually take that information that you've been gathering, all of the job postings in our scenario, and you actually start analyzing that information. So you'll see here we've got the quotations over there, and then we've got the code on this side. So essentially what the quotation is in the scenario, it's the portion that you've selected, or the portion of the job listing that you deem to be important. So in this case, it was them mentioning what type of university degree you would need for a specific job posting. So that quotation, you would then assign a code, which is one of the next steps. So you create and apply codes. So to the right-hand side here, you've got your code. So in this case, that specific quotation was assigned the code formal education. Okay. So that process was followed throughout basically the entire listing. So you'd read through it and you'd select portions and code them. So once again, something that's going to come out throughout all of the phases is writing memos and comments. So as you're going along, you're making comments on things that you're doing, so that you can go back and see why you did things a certain way. So then grouping codes and memos. So as you're creating codes, you have to group them to keep them organized. And quite simply, just to help yourself, because it can get very, very confusing. So on the screen, you can see I've got an example of my code groups in the scenario. So you have certifications, companies, so on and so forth. And inside each of the groups, you have the codes within that's relevant to that code group. So inside of certifications, you'd have a lot of other possible types of certifications. So then the first phase, or the third phase, sorry, which is interpretation. So you actually go and you take what you've done and you start to think about it logically, and how does this all apply and what does it all mean, okay? So you start exploring the coded data using various analysis tools that are inside of Atlas TI. So in this scenario, we pulled up a memo of the Cybersecurity Manager job role. So you'll see that it lists possible tasks for that job role. It lists the knowledge, ability, skills, and possible certifications for that job role. So you'd also start linking quotations, codes, and memos, and all that sort of thing, drawing conclusions about them. You'd continue your memo writing as before, and you'd start creating network views. So this is an example of the network view of the certifications code group. So you can see all of the related certifications that we coded and that we found during our study. So you can also obviously extract reports like in most applications these days. So you can use all of these tools to your advantage. So with all of that out of the way, what does the results say? So the general results and findings were divided into 4 key categories. So this was derived based on the code groups that we had before. So we've got the industry, the job location, the job level, and then the minimum qualifications and certifications. So let's look at the first key categories, so the top industries. So we identified 43 industries in our job listings. The top 3 industries make up 61.7%. So basically, 40 of the industries only make up 38.3%, where 3 of them take up the rest, which is quite a large amount. So the top 3 are information technology and technology services, financial services, and computer software. So in terms of where all of these job listings came from, they came out of 8 of the 9 South African provinces, 2 of which of the provinces, which is Western Cape and the Gauteng region, contributed about 87.5% of the total job listings. So between those 2 provinces, they made up the larger majority of the job postings. Okay, I see we've got a little error there. I think that's fine. Essentially, at the end of the day, each job posting was assigned a different job level. So there's a total of 4 job levels, which is entry level, mid-level, senior level, and executive level. So these job levels are assigned by the poster of the job posting. So they actually assign that upon creating the job listing in LinkedIn. So because we don't have the exact values now, what I can remember off my head is that the entry level positions by far outweighed most of the others. I think it had 30+% of the results, then followed by the mid-level, which is just a little bit below entry level, and then senior and executive levels are also in the mix somewhere, but they take up a much smaller portion than the rest. So in terms of qualifications and certifications, about 82.5% of the job postings required some form of tertiary education by university or college or whatever it might be. And then you'll see that most of the qualifications that you would need is about basically a degree. You need a degree in most cases. And then diploma is about 30%, and then postgraduate qualifications is quite low with 4.3%. Then we've got a list of the top certifications mentioned. So it's CISSP, ITIL, Network Plus, and A+. So if we have a look at the job role results and findings, so this is specifically related to the job roles now. All of the job roles as well as the knowledge areas were divided into these categories listed here. So these categories you'll see we follow with them throughout most of the research and what we'll be covering now. So if we look at the job roles, I've got an extract here from the larger table, which is specifically the cybersecurity job category. You can see that there are codes. So these codes are assigned for all of the jobs, the knowledge, the skills, abilities, all of that have been signed codes. And you'll see that the codes essentially stand for something. So it's cybersecurity, and the J is for a job, okay? And then they're each numbered. So these are the job roles that we discovered specifically based on cybersecurity. So this is the larger table. So in total, there were 20 job roles that we identified. And each of the job roles had been categorized based on those categories that we mentioned before. So the cybersecurity, strategy, governance, and all of that. So then this is the knowledge areas. So essentially the knowledge areas, there were quite a few of them as well. And this is another extract of it. Same coding as before, just followed throughout. So this is then the larger table of it. 54 knowledge areas had been identified in total. And similar to the job roles, they were also categorized based on those 5 key categories that we listed before. Skills, 23 skills identified. Now, they were not categorized based on those 5 categories. They were categorized based on whether they were technical or non-technical of nature. So something to make note of is the fact that there's quite a lot more non-technical skills listed here than there are technical skills. And even those technical skills are very generalized. They're not really, can I say, technical, if I have to put it that way. So most of the same can be said for the abilities. There were 27 abilities identified, also based on technical and non-technical. And once again, a lot more non-technical than there is technical. So all of these skills and abilities were mapped based on those previous 5 categories that we mentioned, so the cybersecurity and all of those categories. So some of the skills that you might want to take note of here is the troubleshooting skills and the problem-solving skills, which were actually, in terms of the troubleshooting skills, were in all 5 of the job categories, and then problem-solving skills was in 4 of them. So, and cybersecurity on top had a total of 5 of the 6 skills listed that belong to that category. So same thing follows throughout for non-technical. So the notable skills are analytical thinking, communication skills, attention to detail, and logical thinking. And you can also, once again, see cybersecurity is one of the top contributors. Then mapping of technical skills or technical abilities, same thing as before. Those are 2 notable abilities. And then once again, cybersecurity is coming out on top along with 2 other categories. Then we've got the mapping of the non-technical abilities. Ability to work in teams and ability to maintain confidentiality are 2 notable abilities. And cybersecurity, once again, is something that is taking up a good portion of the non-technical abilities. So implications. So what does all this mean? Because there's a lot of data, and I know most of you probably started snoozing while I was going through it. But it means that IT professionals with cybersecurity KSA specifically are required in various industries in South Africa. That there's a high level of knowledge requirements for even entry-level positions. The tertiary education degrees are mostly recommended. And the skills and abilities related to the cybersecurity job role are by far the most in demand based on the job postings that we found. Employers also seem to have a much larger focus on non-technical skills and abilities compared to technical abilities at this stage. So in conclusion, this study helps us to determine the requirements of the KSAs in terms of employing IT professionals in the 5 identified job categories. So many countries have already been working on and developing their own cybersecurity workforce and skills frameworks. So examples of that would be the IMDA framework that we have from, can't remember off the top of my head now where it's from, but we've also got the NIST framework, which is an American framework, and a few other frameworks as well that do a similar thing. But I feel like South Africa needs to follow suit because our context is not the same as the rest of the world. Each country has its very own unique context in a lot of cases, so it's important that we follow suit. So essentially, the future work will then use the results of this study to propose a cybersecurity skills framework for South Africa. So just as a quick example of what this future work would entail, you can see we've got a job role right here, which is the cybersecurity specialist. It lists all of the possible tasks for that specific job role, possible certifications, knowledge, skills, and abilities that you would require for that specific job role. So at the end of the day, this can be used to further and help educational facilities to create their curriculum, guide employers, employees in terms of upskilling their staff or hiring other people, and all kinds of things. So yeah, that's it.